Alright, I want to give my bit on just Windows Surface in this video. I have a previous video where I was discussing a lot of what the punditry was saying and incorporating enterprise and things like that. I rewatched the presentation, keynote, whatever you want to call it, from the Surface, and just give my opinion and what I think. First and foremost, I'm extremely impressed with the hardware. They've really spent a lot of time and a lot of detail. They've certainly shown that they've put a lot of engineering into it. I think the keyboard is fantastic. If it is everything that they've said it is in the keynote and how it looks and it's truly how it feels, I think that they've hit a home run as far as hardware is concerned. It's quite impressive, and I don't know what else really to add on that because I haven't had my hands on it. I can just go by what I've seen and how it looks, and so on and so forth, read up on what it's made of, how it's constructed, things like that. So I'm quite impressed with that, and I really like that keyboard. It is interesting that with all the opinions going around, and this is a Windows personal tablet, I really don't consider the Surface a tablet at this point. I really think it's like this Ultrabook or whatever the new one, the new Intel Ultrabooks I think they're called, that have a touch screen. They still look very in function, much like a laptop typically would. The Surface goes way beyond on portability though. So if the way I think of it, and the way they're describing the software now, I would say maybe the Windows RT version, probably very much like an iPad competitor, a BlackBerry Playbook competitor, especially with the BlackBerry's new case thing with the keyboard and so on and so forth. As far as the x86 version and that Pro version, I'm thinking that demographic is more of the ultimate, the portable Ultrabook in terms of that target demographic, and it can go, even more, incorporate more of the touch in these Ultrabooks, I guess, of an experience, and have that Microsoft, more of a Microsoft presence in how the software behaves with the actual hardware. One thing that I like about what I was seeing is the detection of when the keyboard actually is docked with the Surface, and that was something I was mentioning before. That the intelligence incorporated into the software is something that is a tablet that wants to be something else. So the iPad doesn't quite do that. You can use a keyboard and a mouse. I've used a keyboard. I haven't used a mouse with the iPad. It's really just okay. I'm inputting text in this field, and so on and so forth, and that's all she wrote. With the Playbook, you can also you type into fields and things like that. I've just seen some demos. I haven't firsthand dealt with the Playbook. I really do want to get the keyboard and see if there's a gesture pad or some way of, because the QNX system on there works very much like WebOS, and a gesture on a trackpad could easily just be almost identical to how your hand would move on the actual tablet itself in its tablet mode, so to speak. So, but moving on to the x86, you've got full-on Windows 8, full-blown operating system, and a very tight package, and I think that's a different demographic altogether. And getting to the software, I wish Microsoft they had the little hiccup with I think with it freezing, and they had to swap it out and stuff. I'm not going to say that Apple hasn't had its share of bloopers, but when you always try to want to get it right, and I felt bad for them up there, but I think they demonstrated what needed to be demonstrated. As far as Windows 8 goes, I said a lot of it in my previous video. Metro is great. I like it. I've made videos, defending the direction that Microsoft is going, but it doesn't mean I'm blind to the challenge and having developers get on board and developing Metro, and perhaps they will, but I'm not. It's an Ultrabook. It's going to be a demographic that wants portability and will utilize applications as such, in my opinion. On the ARM side, I think things are going to be a little bit more limited. So we're looking at more insular type apps, similar to like what you have on the iPad, and farming out to web services for moving things in parallel to what you would take for granted on a desktop. Is the way that I would gather that. We don't have, from what I've read, there's not much out there, and of course we've got to get the actual product out there to see just the extent of the Windows RT version. But I have my eye on that Windows 8 Pro version. I want to sit back and see how things are going. I obviously have my consumer preview here, and you can kind of tell I've been actually doing a hell of a lot with Windows 8. I've got a ton of development tools that I've been programming on it, and I'm very familiar with the way it works and how it with the mouse and things. I've actually gotten more familiar with keyboard shortcuts on it because I'm just not into that. That's just me, and I think people as a quick segue here, you got more into keyboard shortcuts. They'd finally be able to navigate, I think, far faster than ever before in managing it, and especially with this hybrid situation and moving back in desktop. I'm not even going to mess with the mouse when I'm in desktop mode and all this. If I want to go back, I'm using keyboard shortcuts, navigating things, and you can go to an app list. Basically, something that went to sleep here. Let me. So basically, like this, bam, you're in your app list. I've used that a lot for navigation. So I think there's a lot of strengths in where Windows 8 is going. I think and from what I've used, but I admit I am not the everyday user. But I will also have a caveat to that in that everybody's a pro user. We all get hooked up on an average user, and I know this is another quick segue from the Windows service, but hear me out on this. I know so many that go to their place of business and just rip it at work, maybe with 2 or 3 programs, and they know everything. They hardly use a mouse. Like for programs I write for hospitals, they're like asking for tab sequences and things that they can fire through forms and data input, boom, 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 and they'll hit the shortcut keys or change screens and what have you. They get home and all of a sudden the switch has been turned off, and it's just let me go to my email and it's like they've lost everything they had at work when they're at home. I've witnessed that, and I don't know how many people you see that, but everybody's a pro eventually, because if you're really into computers, you're doing something, even like a mechanic shop, they got like that one program up there, and they're just ripping through it, bing, 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 hitting the keys and adding everything up in there and hardly touching the mouse and all that. They go home using a computer, different switch, changed altogether, and perhaps that strength of being that pro at work within Windows 8 and may be able to, they might be able to overcome that discovery period. Because I do think that once you do learn something on Windows 8, you keep it. At least I have. I've had a couple other buddies of mine say the same things. Now I also know other acquaintances that just hate it. So mix and match on that. Anyway, I digress. Getting back to the Surface, that keyboard sensing it, I wanted to touch on that because as a developer, I'm curious if that could be expanded upon and more things that dock that maybe even get more personal that the Surface can detect, because they've obviously gone in a direction where it's ready to receive information even to the color of the keyboard. And that as a program, I'd look at it and say, hey, we can expand upon something like that. And I'll bet it may be something, another external device that's even more personal that, bam, it can do a little bit more automation for you once it's docked into the Surface, and I'm kind of intrigued by that. We didn't get really to see much else other than really just the hardware demonstration of this, because we've all, if you've downloaded the Windows 8 preview, you know pretty much how Windows 8 behaves. So I didn't look for anything else other than really what the hardware was presenting. and I'm impressed with the hardware. I think it's pretty neat that what they did with the keyboard. I am pretty intrigued with that keyboard and how they got into, well, rest weight of your hands, and then how fast the keys will sense. And I'm a big keyboard connoisseur, if you want to say, because I love mechanical keyboards, and I could make a whole video on cherry switches and from blue, black, red, brown, all that. And I bore you with that stuff, but about when they actuate and how fast the signals are sent and so on and so forth. So I'm big into things like that. Call me crazy, but that part of it also got me very intrigued on what I was seeing for the Surface. The next thing we're going to have to really see is price. The one thing I like about what Apple does on a keynote, you have the price. You know it, it's done. I'm tired of these keynotes. It's like, well, it's comparable to this, it's comparable to that, and oh, for crying out loud, at least have your freaking price. When you're introducing something that you've put that much work, into the. Although I would say the introduction of Surface was real cornball. That's just my opinion with the thing. Surface. I would have maybe liked something on a reflective surface showing things from work to social stuff. Maybe it flips and you go inside it, and then like it goes into gaming and things like that. But it's just my artistic side talking. But getting back to price, I hope it's competitive, and I'm not sure what comparable to other ultrabooks out there. And it's funny that they use the word ultrabook for pricing, because I think that's I'm just like I said, that's my definition. Definitely the Pro side, x86 side's an ultrabook to me. As far as the ARM is concerned, with the whole keyboard and thing, it's maybe we can go. It's a more limited ultrabook, and then very much pushing the tablet thing. I think the iPad, when we're talking about tablets, even I've got a playbook. This could with QNX become very ultrabook-like as well with its dock and keyboard. It's certainly got the power to do so, and it behaves, and the way the foundation operating system is not as cumbersome to navigate, and it doesn't have like a home button, things that you'd have to worry about. It could be spoken to quite easily on its natural way of navigating, versus maybe adding more intelligence into it to say, oh, I'm docked. I'm deactivating the home button, and maybe I'm going to add a new way of task switching, like if it were for iOS. But I don't think Apple's after that. I think Apple really wants to make a tablet and keep it a tablet, and serve their customers by saying, hey, that's our tablet, and our MacBook Air is our ultrabook, if you will, or that's our thin, light, full-blown OS X. On nice hardware option for you. If you want more of a touch experience and things like that, you're going to go with the iPad. That's kind of the way I see it here. This move in incorporating touch onto a desktop has been done before, and I go back to my other video and saying, well, what will the reach be? Because how many people are going to use the touch versus it as a keyboard and propping it up, right? Because you're pushing two aspects of this device equally, essentially. And I'm curious, well, they very well may be used equally. But it depends on what does well on the device. And on a Pro device, I think that more Pro apps will be loaded on that. I may be wrong, but why buy a Pro device if you're not going to load more of the professional side of things? And if you're really in that side of things, I think you're going to be using the keyboard far more. Now, you probably take it to conference meetings and other things like that where maybe some of the touch comes in, but I'm willing to bet that more of the keyboard side is in. Now, if you're maybe on the Windows RT side, the ARM side, it's more limited and maybe not as professional, maybe more gaming, more media consumption and things like that. Maybe it gets used. The touch is more used than the keyboard. Now, I'm very curious with this, because I think Apple has a very distinct what they want their products to be, and I'm not going to say that Microsoft's not being distinct. They're doing something that has been done before, and one side got phased out. And one could argue, well, the touch wasn't good enough back then, and UIs are not the same, and all this other stuff, which is a very valid point. So it remains to be seen. It's just something I like to bring up and observe. It's something I observe as a developer and a consumer to kind of see how things go. So that sums up my opinions on Windows Surface, and the rest, remains to be seen. Thanks for watching.